Welcome, Queen. Have you ever found yourself walking away from a conversation and wondering, how did that conversation go so left? If so, today's video is for you, because often what we may not recognize is that the way people choose to communicate tells us something about them and something about what they value. And here's the deal. Different people have different values. It doesn't mean someone is right or someone is wrong. It means that they have a different perspective on what is valuable in their lives. So I want you to think about social media, because we live in a very social world today. Have you ever found an article, a post, anything online where there was a comment section and strangers were arguing? You probably have. You've probably engaged in an argument online. Here's the deal. When people show up in the comment section, there's a mirror up, even though they may not see that mirror. And that mirror is reflecting who they truly are in real life. Because what people will do is they will show you on social media how they handle conflict, how they handle disagreements, and how they feel about authority. So I want you to understand and recognize that as we present ourselves and we communicate with others, we also show others who we are and what we value. So when you think about the types of things that you say and the types of things that you share, what words come to mind that would describe the type of things that you share and value? As you see behind me, the banner has different words that I value. So those words aren't random. I picked those words intentionally. And after years of coaching and equipping other people, specifically women, I recognize something that many people miss. There is a communication gap. And there is a communication gap because often when people come to the table, myself included, we come to the table with our own perspective top of mind, our own values front and center. And if we're not careful and if we're not intentional, we can find ourselves feeling as though our perspective and our way of seeing things is superior. And that can in turn create unnecessary conflict and unnecessary arguments, and sometimes unnecessary or blind dismissiveness. And when I say blind dismissiveness, what I'm saying here is this. Our opinion and our perspective can be so important to us, and we can feel as though it is right, that we don't even take the time to pause to truly hear what someone else is communicating to us about what matters to them. And we cannot have healthy relationships that are rooted and anchored in understanding and acknowledging our differences if we won't even take the time to be quiet and receptive enough to hear somebody else's perspective. So I want you to recognize that communication impacts each and every area of our lives. And if we have what I have identified as the invisible communication gap, meaning we communicate in such a way that we create barriers instead of building bridges, then that is going to negatively impact us and prevent us from having what we truly desire in our relationships. And that's peace and harmony for many of us. And so often what can happen when we operate with the invisible communication gap it actually creates barriers. And those barriers keep them from having the type of relationships they want with the people they want to have them with. And many people who operate with the invisible communication gap confuse being dismissive with being confident. They think that quick communication is clear communication. They show up in a way in which they believe being defensive is strength. And here's the deal. People respond and communicate based off of their emotional capacity, not just their opinion. So we have to get to a place and space where when we choose to communicate, we come to the table curious instead of with a fixed mindset. Because if we come to the table curious, then it opens us up to be available to hear someone else's why. And that's a powerful thing, because just because someone is choosing to have a conversation with you doesn't mean that they are necessarily open to hear your explanation and to understand your why you feel the way you feel, why you chose to share what you shared, why things matter to you that may not matter to them. And I could go on, but I just want to give you some examples of different types of things that may be your why. So I want you to think about personally, have you ever had a friend that you shared something with and that person cut you off before you could finish your statement? Have you ever been at work and you had a disagreement with someone, or you shared something with them that they didn't want to hear, and after that, every time they saw you, or every time they see you rather, they go the other way? Have you ever been in a social setting and someone tried to get out of line with you and you corrected them, and they showed you with their actions or maybe even with their words that they didn't see anything wrong with how they handled you and how they approached you? And maybe you were not on the receiving end. Maybe it was you who cut someone off. Maybe it was you who showed up in a way to where you were unwilling or unreceptive rather to hearing feedback at work. Or maybe it was you who stepped out of line with someone, and when they corrected you, you let them know that you were not the type of person that they should correct. And here's the thing. I don't want you to feel bad. This isn't about bad communication or you being a bad person or other people even being bad people, because I recognize that many of us were not taught how to communicate clearly, how to communicate respectfully, and how to communicate and still keep our boundaries intact. Because we can be powerful, we can be clear, and we can showcase our boundaries in the way that we communicate with others and still build and have healthy relationships with them. So what is one thing that you can do starting today to improve the communication you have with other people? Is that speaking with more clarity? Is that giving more examples? Is that taking the time to pause before you say something? Is that not cutting people off as they are trying to share with you? Is that not trying to finish somebody else's sentences or guess what they are going to say? Think through one thing that you can do today to be a better communicator, and then start doing that as you have conversations with other people. Because if you don't implement it, although you can think about it, without implementation, nothing in your conversations and your communications with other people will change, especially for the better. Which is something that I go much deeper into inside of my From Conflict to Confident webinar and my From Conflict to Confident Accelerator. But for today, I just want you to be able to notice if there are some patterns or habits you have that is creating barriers in your life and in your relationships because of the way that you are communicating with others. And then be willing to commit to do the work to change those patterns so that you have patterns that improve the quality of your relationships, so that your relationships then improve the quality of your life. So I want you to know that this communication series is going to equip you to be able to stop mislabeling confidence, avoidance, or authority. And in the next video, we're going to be talking about the difference in having an opinion and having emotional authority, because they're not the same. The goal isn't to become louder or tougher. It is to have the awareness to recognize what's happening in a conversation and what's happening inside of you as you have conversations with other people. That way you respond from purpose and intention instead of out of frustration or your immediate impulsive reaction. So please recognize that you can have an opinion and you can come to the table with emotional authority. And when you do so, you keep your peace, your power, and your respect for yourself. As always, I'm Coach Sam, telling you that 24 hours doesn't seem long, but in 24 hours, you can change your life. So go ahead and do something life-changing now.